Hi, and welcome back to Center Webcast. This is episode 19 of COVID-19 Indiana edition. I am joined once again today by freelance journalist from the New York Post, Sara Stewart. Sara, are you there?
Oh, I am.
Hello. Hi, there she is. Fantastic.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing fantastic. I'm doing all right, all things considered. I wanted to say a couple of things. So I want to make sure I introduced you correctly. You are a freelance journalist. I've seen your reports in the New York Post, and you also do writing for the Hawkeye here locally.
That's right, and occasionally for CNN Opinion.
CNN Opinion. So you are. I recognize that the Hawkeye is local media, and I love that. But also, there are these other journalists that the New York Post is, I guess, pretty big, and I guess CNN's pretty big too. So appreciate you coming here. We have something in common, a couple things in common, and one I want to mention. You and I are both on the Indiana Borough Council.
There we are.
There we are. Fantastic. You're in 4th Ward, so that may be relevant. And here's the other thing that has more to do with your bio. You are a Northwestern Wildcat. Is that right?
I am.
What's the Northwestern? And you graduated in?
I graduated in 95.
95. Okay, so I was also a Northwestern Wildcat. Were you at the Medill School?
I was actually an English major, but I wrote for the Daily Northwestern.
Okay, I knew the Northwestern.
What year did you graduate?
93.
Oh, okay.
That's not
true.
97. No, 97. You're
okay.
97. 97.
You started in 93.
Anyway. Okay, yes, exactly. Well, welcome. It's great to make that connection. There's some famous Wildcats out there. Have you seen Peter Alexander?
Many. Peter Alexander. I don't. Should I know who Peter Alexander is? I don't.
He's one of the NBC anchors and has been really confrontational with President Trump. President Trump hates him.
Anyway, well, I'll have to look him up.
Go Cats. So let's get right into it. You've been doing some reporting. You were on a couple weeks ago looking at the domestic violence, and you've done some research in terms of domestic violence here in COVID-19. You've got another project right now, has to do with White's Woods and what's happening in White's Woods. Can you tell us a little bit about what's happening there, and then we'll ask about how it relates to COVID-19?
Sure. So what's going on in White's Woods right now is that the White Township supervisors have put forward a plan, their third plan over a couple of decades. The first plan was 1995. The second plan was 2007 to manage the forest. And what that language has meant in the past is timbering an awful lot of the woods. And the new plan that they've put forth has included this new thing about removal of invasive species. So they're saying that this is very much about the health of the forest, and that these are things that need to be removed. But then they've attached to that this cutting down of a lot of trees. And if anyone has been up to White's Woods, you'll have seen many trees that are marked with blue and green dots as you're walking along just the main loop there. So this is the new plan, I guess, that they're trying to sort of usher in what they want to do with the timbering by saying it goes along with removing the invasive species. And this was sort of brought to my attention in early April when someone it was sort of a grapevine thing. Someone emailed me and said, "Hey, I've heard that White Township has a plan to log about 75 mature trees in White's Woods. You might want to check that out." And as it turns out, that was actually a very low figure. What I've been able to ascertain so far is that in the initial 50-acre plot that they've designated tract 1 of 5 tracts, they've marked 250 mature trees so far that they want to take down.
That's 250 trees within 50 acres.
That's right, yeah.
And these are the smaller trees. These are the bigger trees. What are the trees?
These are mostly really big trees. I went out and took pictures of a bunch of them, and most of them are incredibly tall. I think there are maybe some smaller ones, but generally, if you look, they're the big ones. And they've said to me, you know, we're targeting dangerous trees that have limbs hanging over trails. We're targeting diseased trees, but you know, I'm not an arborist, but I've gone out there, and an awful lot of those trees look healthy to me.
So can you tell us about the timeline of this project? So this is something I've been aware of. I guess the couple other iterations that you mentioned, 1985 and 2007, when there was a plan put on the table, and there was a significant pushback by the community. Friends of White's Woods being a group that was formed back in 1995, re-upped there in 2007, and I understand they're active again. I guess my question is, what's been the timeline on the development of this project? It seems to have sprung up somewhat quickly with Township kind of well on their way. My understanding is that they've already hired a contractor to do this work, have made that contract with the Township. Have there been public meetings, and have these been impacted by COVID-19, the pandemic?
So it's a little confusing. I have been trying to figure out their timeline, and I did interview the township manager, Milt Lady, for my story. He says that they've been working on this plan for a couple of years now. And I don't know how public they made that. That may have been on their agenda, but if anyone, maybe nobody's been paying attention and they sort of put it on the agenda for their meetings and nobody ever noticed. But I kind of doubt that that's true, just because people have been, I imagine, especially the Friends of White's Woods, people have been pretty vigilant about this ever since 2008. So the first time this sort of came to the public's attention was in April, when the stay-at-home order was already in place, and there was this sort of inability of people to do what they normally would have done, which is organize, which is talk to your neighbors, maybe circulate a petition, and nobody was able to do any of those things. Obviously, they weren't even really able to attend the meeting that they had on April 22nd.
Were there public meetings? Is the township having public meetings still?
No, there were no public meetings. There was no public hearing. At the meeting on April 22nd, it was repeatedly asked of the supervisors, would you please have a public hearing? Would you allow the public to weigh in on this? And they said more than once, we've heard all we need to hear. I don't think we need to have any more public hearings. We know that already. I'm only going to have a public hearing if the DCNR mandates it, is what they've said. And which is surprising, because what they heard from the public the last time was that we don't want that. So to say that you don't, that you already know what the public has to say, is very undemocratic, and really a betrayal of the public trust that people put in the officials who run their township. They're not running this for themselves, they're running this in the public interest. So they have a responsibility to involve the community in decisions about a place like White's Woods, which is for everybody, obviously.
So, from a journalist perspective, we're talking about transparency here. Has this been a transparent process? Are we, if it has been on the agenda for several weeks, or several months, or even several years, then there should be a paper trail. And indeed, there should be a paper trail about the current project. Have we been able to get access to those documents? Those should be FOIA-able, I would imagine. Anything that happens in their meetings should be subject to open records laws. That
is absolutely true. And I know that the open records law has produced the semblance of a plan that is available on Friends of White's Woods website, but it is not really a plan per se, and they've already sort of begun backing off calling it a plan. It's sort of 4 pieces. It's an overview, it's evaluation of the timber, and it's sort of a vague idea of what the forester wants to do, but there aren't a whole lot of details in it. And beyond that, I haven't seen anything as far as discussion from the open records requests. The only thing I've seen, and this was also brought up at the meeting on the 22nd, was a mention of discussion of putting a cell tower in White's Woods. In February, it was proposed that there was a company that was interested in putting a cell tower in White's Woods, and the supervisors said, yes, we would be interested in that. Let's proceed in exploring that option. And according to the township manager, that's as far as they've gotten, and they have no immediate plans to do it. And they have no plans to disrupt the woods further if they do it. But again, that's not really saying that much.
So we're both elected officials too, and we're trying to make decisions. And I want to assume that the elected folks in all places are in those positions to make the best decisions for their community. And so, what seems to be the rationale for the supervisors in terms of why now is the time to bring this up? Are they concerned about transparency? You know, it sounds like they're not concerned about public. I want to assume that local government is concerned about transparency. Why is now the right time? What are they saying?
So just let me know if I'm breaking up here. You're breaking up a little bit, and I'll restart if I am. In the meantime, they have maintained that they've been very transparent. They have said, if anybody is interested in what we're doing, you're free to show up at our meetings. Please, you know, we haven't given any more public notice about this than we would for any sewer or road project. So they've been sort of blithe about it, saying, you know, if you care so much about our township, why aren't you always at our meetings? Which isn't really, I mean, this is something that there's more widespread public interest in. So you would think that they would expect that and make it available to the public in a different way. So I think that they're saying that they've been very transparent is a little disingenuous. That said, you know, maybe they have been working on it for 2 years, and they say that this time is of the essence now because they don't want to let the invasive species come into full bloom before they start tearing them up, which does make a certain amount of sense. But at the same time, the township manager has also said to me that winter would be an ideal time. So I don't know why they weren't doing it back then. So I've been getting a lot of contradictory information.
It seems like if now's the time, I think it's the Japanese blackberry.
Japanese barberry is the big one.
Barberry. Yeah. It seems like if they haven't removed that for the last 8 years, if they were to wait another year, if they're in a big hurry, I'm not sure what the big hurry is. So what is, I guess, what is the reaction from the community in terms of, in particular, Friends of White's Woods, and what seems to be the timeline? Are they about to go in and cut these things down?
So the reaction from the community has actually been really heartening, I think. Friends of White's Woods got together again in a remarkably short amount of time. They sort of reconvened their board. There have been some people who've moved away, I think, who have sort of weighed in, but maybe aren't on the board anymore. But they got back together. They've hired a legal representation from an environmental law firm. They have raised already over $5,000 to go to their legal fees. And they have encouraged people to write letters to the editor of the Gazette, several of which have already run, to publish pictures of themselves with trees in White's Woods that have been marked, which people have been doing. So they've really been impressively organized. And they also, I believe, sent letters to people in the neighborhood immediately surrounding White's Woods, letting them know what was going on if they didn't know. And also just for myself, I walk back in the woods all the time. When I meet people on the trails and I tell them what's going on, almost to a person, they've been surprised and upset about it. So to me, it's anecdotally anyway, it's been very clear that people love the woods and don't want to see them heavily timbered. As far as the timeline goes, it's a little confusing because, again, they haven't really been very transparent about that. The latest information I have is that they haven't gotten DCNR approval on anything yet, including the removal of the invasive species. So they're waiting to get approval on that, even though the supervisors have already approved that part of the plan. They have not approved the harvesting of the timber plan, and I have heard that that will be at least a month or 2 months ahead. So there's a little bit more time on that.
So it's the first part, well, I guess the good part, if there is to be a good part, managing the invasive species.
Although, there's, and this sort of goes into a different area, but there is a lot of question about whether their plan to handle the invasive species is really the way to go. there's been some question that the plan is to rip them out and then to rototill the soil, and then to remove a bunch of trees, opening up the canopy to more sunlight, which some people I've spoken to have said that's a great recipe for bringing back more invasive species.
Seems like it.
So it will create a lot of great work for the forester who they've contracted with. It won't be so great for what they're purporting to do for the health of the woods.
So can you give me a I don't know, I guess it's an opinion. So right now, there's a project that's been controversial within this community over the last decade. We are under these stay-at-home orders where, granted, there are Zoom meetings and the public is being shared. It seems like it is a cynical time at best for the supervisors to be moving this project through. There were even reports that there was downright cynicism from supervisors saying they don't want to hear from Friends of White's Woods anymore and want to get this thing through, which just seems incredibly cynical. Again, assuming that these elected folks are, they don't get paid much for those positions. Right. Is there that there is such a cynical analysis, and I guess I'm looking for a way out of that. I don't know if there is one.
No, I'm with you. I always really I am a bit of a cynic, but I always want to think that somebody has our best interests at heart, right? So I want to think that they have the best of intentions here. I don't know. I don't know if I can find that here. I don't know why they're doing this right now, and especially since they've actively said they don't want to hear from us. It seems pretty clear that the pandemic created ideal conditions for them to do this with as little feedback as possible. Although I don't really think that's working out that way. I think that they're already, they're just getting a huge influx of calls and letters and people calling into the meeting. So I don't know that it's sort of working the way that they thought. But I will say, I've read a lot of studies, about trees, about all the benefits of trees. And one of the benefits of having a nature oasis like White's Woods is that it's very psychologically helpful in stressful times, such as a pandemic. And a lot of us, I think maybe an unprecedented amount of us, have been going back to the woods in the past weeks. And so to feel like a local government is actively coming in and trying to tear that down during a time when we are all dealing with a crazy amount of anxiety from the world at large feels like sort of an extra kick when you're already down. And I'm a little surprised that the supervisors would be so blind to that. I know they've been in this community forever, and I'm sure that in a way they do think they're doing the right thing, but I don't think that they've taken that into consideration. And I think that's a serious point that they really ought to have considered before moving forward.
Well, I really appreciate and give on it. It does seem to be blowing up, at least in terms of the work that Friends of White's Woods have done, and they do have a record of success in making sure there is transparency out there. So that's great. I appreciate. Is there a Hawkeye article coming?
There is. Yes.
Coming out.
Actually, I think a series. We're gonna. I've spoken to so many people. We're dividing it up into several articles now, but the first one should be coming very soon. Yes.
Awesome. Well, we really look forward to that. Is there anything we missed here that you want to let folks know about what's happening?
I had a side point, and I gave you a couple of the links to that, which is just as far as the coronavirus goes. One of the things we've learned about coronavirus is that air pollution can make you more susceptible to it. And what we have also learned is that trees are excellent protection from air pollution. So again, not a great time to be planning to cut down 250 trees, or if you multiply that by all the tracts of land they're eyeing, that's going to be over 1,000 trees. We know that trees are good for us, and I'm not sure now is the time to be taking down a large number of them in a community that's adjacent to 3 power plants.
Right. I think it's one of those community assets. I know there's feedback from other folks. You and I were on another meeting, a borough council meeting, where this was also brought up. And one of the things that really caught my attention from sitting on Public Works is the stormwater runoff. Yes. And again, sort of these environmental impacts that are beyond just the immediate project. I think what you're talking about is exactly true. I think our community values more trees. We always want more trees, and for all of those reasons. And I think those environmental impacts are really significant. So I hope some of this can shine some light on this project and have folks asking the right kind of questions.
I hope so too.
Well, thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate it. Hope you'll come back. I keep saying this. I have these I have these dreams of a Center Hawkeye combined webcast, that can sort of go on, because like I mentioned at the beginning, you actually have training in journalism, and the rest of us are sort of community folks that are like, hey, let's bring some folks on. So we appreciate the work.
Let's do it.
We appreciate the work you do on there. We got to get you more involved. We'll do it.
All right.
Great. Well, thank you very much.